April 15th, 2021, 11:47 p.m. Metropolitan General Hospital, Manhattan. Alexandra Sterling, 29, 8 months pregnant with twins, was lying in a private maternity suite when the door burst open. A woman in a designer coat and heels stormed in, eyes wild with fury. "You think you won?" the woman screamed. "You think carrying his babies makes you special?" Before Alexandra could press the call button, the woman lunged, grabbed Alexandra's foreline, ripped it from her arm. Blood sprayed across the white sheets. Then the woman's hands went to Alexandra's throat. Alexandra struggled, trying to protect her swollen belly while fighting off the attack. She couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. The baby monitor alarm shrieked as the twins' heart rates plummeted from stress. Security burst in within 90 seconds. They pulled the attacker off, restrained her, called the police. Alexandra gasped for air, clutching her stomach, terrified her babies had been harmed. The attacker was Vanessa Monroe, 34, the longtime mistress of Alexandra's husband, billionaire real estate mogul Marcus Sterling. But what happened in the next 72 hours wouldn't just shock Manhattan's elite social circles. It would expose a web of lies, manipulation, and a father's calculated revenge that would dominate headlines for months and change how hospitals handle domestic violence in obstetric wards. This wasn't a love triangle gone wrong. It was something far more sinister. Something that involved forged medical records, a conspiracy to harm unborn children, and a billionaire father who would stop at nothing to protect his daughter and grandchildren. And the truth? It started 6 months earlier, when Alexandra discovered she was pregnant and her seemingly perfect marriage began to crumble. This is the story of the mistress who attacked a pregnant wife in a hospital room, and how her desperate act of jealousy triggered a billionaire's meticulously planned revenge that exposed corruption reaching into the highest levels of Manhattan society. Alexandra Sterling had married into wealth, but she'd never asked for it. She was a pediatric nurse at Bellevue Hospital when she met Marcus Sterling at a charity gala in 2018. He was charming, successful, 12 years her senior. They dated for 8 months before he proposed with a ring that cost more than her annual salary. They married in June 2019, a small ceremony despite Marcus's wealth. Alexandra wasn't interested in society pages and charity balls. She wanted a partnership, a family, a life built on trust. Marcus seemed to want the same things. He was attentive, generous, supportive of her career. He spoke about having children when the time was right, but there were signs Alexandra later realized she'd missed. Late-night phone calls Marcus took in another room, business trips that lasted longer than expected, a distance that crept into their marriage like frost spreading across glass. In October 2020, Alexandra discovered she was pregnant. Not just pregnant, carrying twins, a boy and a girl, revealed in the ultrasound at 12 weeks. Marcus's reaction was strange. Not joy, not excitement. Panic. "Are you sure?" he kept asking. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Marcus, I'm 12 weeks along. The ultrasound is clear. We're having twins." He'd gone pale, made an excuse about work, and left the house. Didn't return until morning. That's when Alexandra started investigating. She found the credit card statements Marcus had been hiding. Hotel charges, jewelry purchases, restaurant receipts for 2, all in the same neighborhood. The Upper East Side, blocks from Marcus's office. She hired a private investigator. Within 2 weeks, she had her answer, Vanessa Monroe. Marcus had been seeing her for 3 years. Before the marriage, during the marriage, Vanessa worked as a consultant for one of Marcus's development companies, a convenient cover for their affair. But the worst part? Vanessa was also pregnant, 7 months along, due just weeks before Alexandra's twins. Alexandra confronted Marcus in December 2020. He didn't deny it, didn't apologize. He simply said, "I'll take care of both families. You'll want for nothing." "I don't want your money," Alexandra said, her voice breaking. "I wanted a husband, a father for my children. Not this." "Then divorce me," Marcus said coldly. "But you'll get nothing. The prenup is ironclad." Alexandra's father, Richard Hastings, had warned her about the prenup. Richard was old money. His family had built their fortune in pharmaceuticals 3 generations ago. He'd never liked Marcus, never trusted him. If you divorce him now, you leave with nothing, her attorney confirmed. Not even child support is guaranteed given the prenup structure. He's protected himself completely. So Alexandra made a decision. She would stay until the babies were born, establish paternity, then fight for her children's rights in court. She moved into the guest wing of their penthouse, stopped speaking to Marcus except through lawyers, and waited, growing more pregnant and more isolated, while Marcus divided his time between her and Vanessa. But someone was growing increasingly unstable, Vanessa Monroe. Vanessa had been promised marriage, promised that once she gave Marcus a child, he would leave Alexandra and make their relationship public. But Marcus hadn't left his wife, wouldn't even acknowledge Vanessa's pregnancy publicly. When Vanessa gave birth to a daughter in February 2021, Marcus visited once, sent money, but didn't put his name on the birth certificate, didn't announce the child, treated Vanessa like an inconvenient secret. Vanessa's resentment festered into obsession. She hired her own private investigator to follow Alexandra. She called the penthouse at all hours, hanging up when Alexandra answered. She sent threatening messages from burner phones. And on April 15th, when she learned Alexandra had been admitted to Metropolitan General for monitoring due to high blood pressure, Vanessa snapped. Alexandra had been admitted to the hospital 3 days earlier, April 12th, for pregnancy-induced hypertension. At 8 months pregnant with twins, her blood pressure had spiked to dangerous levels, 160/110. Dr. Catherine Walsh, her obstetrician, made the call immediately. You're not going home until these babies are born. Your blood pressure is too unstable. One wrong spike and you could have a stroke, or the babies could go into distress. Alexandra was placed in a private suite on the 5th floor, maternity wing, high-risk unit, 24-hour monitoring, magnesium sulfate drip to prevent seizures, strict bed rest. Marcus visited once on the first day, stayed 10 minutes, said the right things but looked distracted, left without touching her hand. Alexandra's father, Richard, visited every day, brought books, spoke to doctors, sat beside her bed doing crossword puzzles. He was 72, a widower since Alexandra's mother died 5 years earlier. His daughter and her unborn children were everything to him. You deserve better than this, Richard told her on the evening of April 15th, hours before the attack. I know, Dad, Alexandra said, her hand on her enormous belly. After the babies come, I'll figure it out. Right now, I just need them to be safe. At 11:32 p.m., Richard left for night. The nurse checked Alexandra's vitals at 11:40 p.m. Blood pressure slightly elevated but stable. Twins' heart rates normal. Alexandra was dozing when she heard the door open. She assumed it was the night nurse coming for another check. It wasn't. Vanessa Monroe had gained access to the maternity ward by claiming to be Alexandra's sister, providing a fake ID, and waiting until the front desk changed shifts. Security footage later showed her entering the building at 11:15 p.m., taking the stairs to avoid cameras in the elevators, and walking directly to Alexandra's room. She'd clearly planned this, timed it, knew the layout. The attack lasted 90 seconds but felt eternal to Alexandra. Vanessa's hands around her throat, the 4 being torn out, the panic of not being able to breathe while pregnant, knowing stress could trigger premature labor or harm the babies. Security arrived because a nurse 2 doors down heard the commotion and hit the panic button. They subdued Vanessa, called police, and immediately assessed Alexandra. Her blood pressure had spiked to 180/120. Dangerous. Stroke territory. The twins' heart rates had dropped, a sign of fetal distress. Dr. Walsh was called emergently. She examined Alexandra, reviewed the monitors, and made a split-second decision. We're delivering these babies tonight, she said. Emergency C-section. Your body is in crisis, and so are they. We can't wait any longer. Alexandra was prepped for surgery within 20 minutes. Marcus was called but didn't arrive in time. Richard raced back to the hospital, making it just as Alexandra was being wheeled into the OR. At 1:47 a.m. on April 16th, Alexandra's twins were born, a boy and a girl, 6 weeks premature but breathing on their own. They were immediately taken to the NICU for monitoring. Alexandra, exhausted and traumatized, asked for her father before she even asked about the babies. Richard stood beside her in recovery. His face was grim, not with worry, but with barely contained rage. "She's been arrested," he told Alexandra. "The woman who attacked you. Vanessa Monroe. She's being charged with attempted assault, trespassing, and endangering a pregnancy." "Good," Alexandra whispered. "But that's not enough," Richard said quietly. "Not nearly enough." What Alexandra didn't know was that her father had been preparing for this moment, or something like it, for months. Richard Hastings hadn't just been a concerned grandfather-to-be. He'd been conducting his own investigation into Marcus Sterling and Vanessa Monroe. And what he'd uncovered was far worse than a simple affair. Richard had hired a team of forensic accountants and private investigators beginning in December, right after Alexandra told him about Marcus's infidelity and Vanessa's pregnancy. They discovered that Vanessa Monroe wasn't just Marcus's mistress. She was part of a deliberate scheme to defraud Alexandra and potentially harm her children. Here's what Richard found. Forged medical records. Vanessa had created fake prenatal medical records claiming her baby was Marcus's biological child, complete with falsified paternity test results dated before the baby's birth. She bribed a lab technician to produce the fraudulent documents. Financial manipulation. Marcus had been transferring millions of dollars into offshore accounts in Vanessa's name, money that legally belonged to the marital estate and should have been accessible to Alexandra in divorce proceedings. Conspiracy to contest paternity. Richard's team uncovered emails between Marcus, Vanessa, and Marcus's attorney discussing a plan to challenge the paternity of Alexandra's twins after birth, claiming Alexandra had been unfaithful to avoid child support obligations. The hospital attack wasn't random. Text messages recovered from Vanessa's phone showed she'd been planning to make sure those babies never threatened my daughter's inheritance. The attack was meant to induce premature labor or cause miscarriage. This wasn't jealousy. This was attempted harm to unborn children for financial gain. Richard presented all of this evidence to the district attorney's office on April 16th, less than 12 hours after the attack. But Richard didn't stop there. He went to the media. On April 18th, the New York Post ran a front-page story. Billionaire's mistress arrested for a hospital attack on pregnant wife. Conspiracy to harm unborn twins alleged. The story included security footage of Vanessa attacking Alexandra, copies of the forged medical documents' financial records, showing Marcus's hidden assets text messages detailing the conspiracy. Manhattan exploded. Marcus Sterling, who'd cultivated a public image as a philanthropist and family man, was exposed as a liar and co-conspirator. His business partners began distancing themselves. His charity board positions were revoked. His developments faced investor withdrawals. Vanessa Monroe was held without bail, charged with attempted assault conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and endangerment of a pregnancy, breaking and entering. But Richard still wasn't finished. On April 22nd, he filed a massive civil lawsuit against both Marcus and Vanessa, seeking full custody of Alexandra's twins or Alexandra dissolution of the prenuptial agreement based on fraud, and duress $50 million in damages criminal investigation into Marcus's financial crimes. And here's where Richard's revenge became truly calculated. He bought Marcus's largest debt. Marcus's newest development project, a $400 million luxury tower in Tribeca, was financed through a consortium of lenders. Richard quietly purchased a majority of that debt through shell companies. Then he called it due. Marcus couldn't pay. His assets were frozen due to the fraud investigation. His reputation was destroyed. No one would lend to him. On May 3rd, 2021, Marcus Sterling filed for bankruptcy. The man who'd been worth an estimated $800 million was financially ruined in less than 3 weeks. The legal proceedings moved quickly given the high-profile nature of the case. Vanessa Monroe's trial. In September 2021, Vanessa was convicted on all charges. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: security footage, text messages, witness testimony from the nurses who'd seen the attack. Her defense claimed temporary insanity brought on by postpartum depression. The jury didn't buy it. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Her daughter, now in the custody of Vanessa's sister, would grow up knowing her mother tried to harm 2 unborn children out of jealousy and greed. Marcus Sterling's downfall. Marcus was never criminally charged. The prosecutors couldn't prove he knew about Vanessa's plan to attack Alexandra, but the civil case destroyed him. The prenup was voided due to fraud. Marcus had hidden assets during its drafting. Alexandra was awarded full custody of the twins with supervised visitation rights for Marcus $15 million in immediate assets $50,000/month in child support. The penthouse were $12 million, 30% of Marcus's remaining business interests. The bankruptcy meant Marcus couldn't appeal or fight back. He'd lost everything. He currently lives in a modest apartment in Jersey City, working as a consultant for a mid-level real estate firm. He sees his children one supervised afternoon per month. He's never met Vanessa's daughter. Richard Hastings' victory. Richard's revenge had been total. But when Alexandra asked him how he'd known to prepare all of this evidence, he simply said, "I didn't trust him from the day you brought him home. I hoped I was wrong, but I prepared for the possibility I was right. When people show you who they are, believe them and protect yourself accordingly." Alexandra's recovery, both physical and emotional, took months. The twins, Emma and Noah, spent 3 weeks in a NICU due to their premature birth. But they were strong, healthy, and thriving. Alexandra was able to take them home in early May. The psychological trauma of the attack required therapy. Alexandra worked with Dr. Jennifer Rodriguez, a therapist specializing in trauma and domestic violence. She processed the betrayal, the attack, the fear she'd felt in that hospital room. She also joined a support group for women who'd experienced domestic violence during pregnancy. She learned she wasn't alone. Studies show that pregnancy increases the risk of domestic violence by 30%. Abusers often escalate when they feel their partner is vulnerable or trapped. Alexandra eventually returned to work as a pediatric nurse. Though at a different hospital, she wanted to reclaim her career, her identity as something other than the billionaire's ex-wife who was attacked. The twins are now 3 years old. Bright, curious, loved. They have no memory of the circumstances of their birth. They know their grandfather, Richard, who remains actively involved in their lives, reading them stories and teaching them chess. Richard's health has declined. He was diagnosed with heart disease in 2022, but he tells Alexandra it was worth it. "I got to see my grandchildren safe. I got to see you free. That's all father can ask." Metropolitan General Hospital implemented new security protocols after the attack. Photo ID verification for all visitors to maternity wards, panic buttons in every patient room, security guards stationed on high-risk obstetric floors, 24/7 mandatory training for all staff on recognizing signs of domestic violence in pregnant patients. Dr. Walsh, Alexandra's OB, now teaches a course for medical students on obstetric violence, the phenomenon of pregnant women being targeted for abuse because of their pregnancy. She uses Alexandra's case, with permission, as a teaching example. This case highlighted several critical issues in maternal health care and domestic violence. Pregnancy as a trigger for violence. Research shows that 1 in 6 pregnant women experiences domestic violence, and violence often begins or escalates during pregnancy. Reasons include abusers' jealousy of the baby, financial stress of impending parenthood, loss of control as partner prepares to become a mother, pregnancy, making it harder for victim to leave hospital, security failures. Before Alexandra's case, many hospitals had lax visitor policies and maternity wards. The assumption was that these were happy places where security wasn't priority. Alexandra's case proved otherwise. Financial abuse and prenuptial agreements. Alexandra's prenup had been designed to trap her financially. Many wealthy individuals use ironclad prenups to prevent spouses from leaving, knowing financial dependence keeps victims trapped. Courts now scrutinize prenups more carefully for signs of coercion or fraud, the intersection of wealth and justice. Richard Hastings' revenge was only possible because he had the resources to hire investigators, attorneys, and by Marcus's debt. Most domestic violence victims don't have access to these tools. The case sparked conversations about how justice is often unavailable to those without wealth, warning signs that a relationship may become dangerous during pregnancy. Partner becomes controlling or isolating as pregnancy progresses. Partner expresses resentment toward the baby. Partner pressures for termination or adoption when you want to keep the baby. Escalating verbal abuse or threats. Financial control or hiding of assets. Monitoring of phone, email, or movements. History of violence that pauses during early pregnancy but resumes. If you're pregnant and experiencing abuse, tell your healthcare provider in private. There are mandatory reporters who can help. Document all abuse, photos, text messages, emails. Create a safety plan. Where you'll go, who you'll call. Contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. Know your legal rights regarding custody and support. Alexander's case proves that pregnancy doesn't protect women from violence. In fact, it often puts them at greater risk. But it also proves that with support, resources, and courage, survivors can rebuild their lives and protect their children. Today, Alexandra Sterling is 33 years old and rebuilding her life. She's become an advocate for domestic violence survivors, particularly pregnant women. She speaks at medical conferences, trains hospital staff, and volunteers with women's shelters. Emma and Noah are healthy, happy kindergartners who love dinosaurs art class and their grandfather's bedtime stories. Marcus Sterling has had no meaningful relationship with his children. He pays child support but hasn't fought for increased visitation. By all accounts, he's become a broken, bitter man who blames everyone but himself for his downfall. Vanessa Monroe is still in prison and will be eligible for parole in 2027. She's had no contact with her own daughter, whose aunt is raising her in Pennsylvania, far from the Manhattan scandal. Richard Hastings, now 76, lives near Alexandra and helps with childcare when his health permits. He tells his grandchildren stories about their mother's bravery and teaches them that standing up for what's right sometimes means fighting battles that seem impossible. When asked if he regrets the scorched earth revenge he unleashed on Marcus Sterling, Richard simply says, "He threatened my daughter. He threatened my grandchildren. I protected them using every legal tool available. That's not revenge. That's justice." If the story made you think differently about domestic violence during pregnancy, please like this video. Awareness can save lives. These warning signs can help someone you know. Subscribe to our channel. We share stories that expose hidden dangers and empower people to protect themselves. Real cases, real lessons, real change. Comment below. Have you or someone you know experienced escalating control or abuse during pregnancy? Your story might help someone recognize the warning signs in their own relationship. You're not alone. Next time, we'll explore the case of the woman who had been in pain for 10 years until a new doctor found surgical scissors inside her body that 17 doctors had missed. It's a story about medical negligence, patient persistence, and the importance of never giving up when you know something is wrong. Remember, wealth doesn't make someone trustworthy. Charm doesn't mean character. And pregnancy should be a time of joy and protection, not vulnerability to violence. Trust your instincts, protect yourself, and know that help is available, no matter how powerful your abuser may seem.